I 32F never thought I'd be in this situation, but life takes the wildest turns when you least expect it. What started as my husband becoming more environmentally conscious turned into a nightmare that almost tore my family apart. I need advice, but more than anything, I just need to get this off my chest. My husband, Josh 34M, has always been passionate about the environment. When we first started dating, I found it refreshing that he cared so much about the planet. We would go on eco-friendly vacations, use reusable everything, and talk about how we wanted to raise our kids with a sustainable mindset. It was one of the things I loved most about him. He was the kind of guy who'd remind everyone to recycle at parties, ask about carbon emissions before we booked flights, and would spend weekends volunteering at local environmental organizations. I was always proud of him for that. To me, it felt like I had found someone who cared about making the world a better place, and together, we were working towards a future where our children, and a 5F and Luke 3M, could grow up in a healthier, safer world. But about 2 years ago, Josh started diving deeper into online forums about climate change. At first, it was fine. He'd share facts with me, we'd have discussions about what we could do as a family to reduce our carbon footprint. But then, he started getting more intense. He found this one group online that believed the world was on the verge of collapse due to climate change and that the government was hiding the true severity of the crisis. I had heard people talk about how overwhelming the news about climate change could be. It's easy to feel hopeless sometimes. I thought maybe Josh was just going through one of those phases where the weight of it all was getting to him, and that he'd come back to reality eventually. But instead of coming back, he went further down the rabbit hole. Every night, he was on his computer, spending hours in these forums, talking to people who shared the same doom-filled vision of the future. They believed that global governments were conspiring to downplay the effects of climate change to keep the masses complacent while they built secret bunkers for themselves. Josh became convinced that the world was just years if not months away from a catastrophic collapse. He started stockpiling food and supplies. It wasn't just a few extra cans of beans in the pantry. No, he was buying bulk items: rice, water purification tablets, even a solar generator. At first, I thought it was a weird hobby, like people who get too into extreme couponing. But when boxes started arriving every day, I asked him what he was doing. He told me, "I'm preparing for the collapse." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but the serious look on his face wiped the smile off mine. "Josh, the world isn't going to collapse," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We're not in the middle of some post-apocalyptic movie." He didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at me like I was the one who didn't understand what was happening. Then he showed me articles and videos from the forums he'd been visiting, all with sensationalist headlines like "The end is near," "Why you need to get out now," and "Government lies exposed." It was terrifying, but not for the reasons Josh thought. I realized in that moment that I was losing my husband to an ideology I couldn't compete with. One day, about a year ago, Josh came home from work with a wild idea. He wanted to sell our house and move to a commune. Not just any commune, but one that was miles away from civilization in the mountains. A place where people believed they could survive the impending climate apocalypse. He showed me pictures of the place. It was a sprawling piece of land, complete with solar panels, wind turbines, greenhouses, and people living in tiny cabins. I thought he was joking at first, but he was dead serious. He had already contacted a realtor, had the house appraised, and was talking about how we needed to get out before it was too late. I shut that down immediately. We have 2 young kids, Anna and Luke, and the idea of uprooting them to live in some isolated, conspiracy-fueled commune was insane. We live in a beautiful neighborhood with good schools. I have a great job as a nurse, and we were financially stable. Why would we throw all that away? That fight was the beginning of the end. Josh accused me of being brainwashed by the system, of caring more about my job and material comforts than about our family's safety. I told him he was being irrational, that the world wasn't going to end tomorrow, and even if things got bad, we'd figure it out together. But he wasn't hearing any of it. The more I pushed back, the more distant Josh became. Over the next few months, Josh started spending weekends at this commune, saying he was helping them prepare. He would come home and talk about how free he felt there, how disconnected from the lies of society he was. Meanwhile, I was at home, juggling two kids, my job, and the growing realization that my husband was slipping away from me. I felt helpless, watching him spiral deeper into this fear-driven mindset. It wasn't just climate change anymore. He started talking about the government, big pharma, 5 grams towers. It seemed like every day he had a new conspiracy theory to share. Our conversations turned into arguments, and our arguments turned into silence. I tried to reason with him. I even went to the commune once to see what it was all about, but it was unsettling. The people there seemed nice enough, but they were all so consumed by this idea that the world was on the verge of collapse. They had solar panels, water purifiers, their own food supply. It was like a doomsday prepper's dream. But what really got me was the sense of fear that permeated everything. They didn't see a future for the world outside their little bubble, and I couldn't live like that. Finally, one night, Josh gave me an ultimatum. He said, "If you're not willing to move to the commune with me, then I don't see how we can stay together." I was floored. This was the man I loved, the father of my children, and he was willing to throw it all away for some conspiracy-fueled fantasy. I told him if he wanted to leave, he could. But I wasn't going anywhere, and neither were the kids. Josh moved out the next day. He went to live at the commune full-time, and we separated. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I knew I couldn't follow him down that path. For the first few months, co-parenting was rough. Josh would show up late for visits or not at all. When he did come, he would lecture me about how I was endangering our kids by not preparing for the collapse. He even tried to get Anna and Luke to adopt some of the commune's practices, like refusing to use anything plastic or only eating the canned food he brought from the commune. I had to put my foot down multiple times. Things got even worse when Josh filed for joint custody. He claimed that I was mentally unfit to care for the kids because I wasn't taking the necessary steps to protect them from the impending disaster. He said the commune was a safer environment for them, where they would learn to survive. I couldn't believe it. He was actually trying to take my kids away from me because I wouldn't buy into his climate apocalypse cult. The court battle was exhausting, but thankfully, the judge saw through his nonsense and granted me full custody. Josh gets supervised visitation, but only on the condition that he doesn't try to indoctrinate the kids into his conspiracy theories. The legal process was grueling, though. I had to hire a lawyer, gather testimonies from family and friends, and endure Josh's attempts to paint me as an unfit mother. He presented screenshots from his forums, trying to prove that I was ignorant to the impending doom. It was heartbreaking to see him so far gone. The man who once promised to protect me and our children was now trying to take them away, convinced that I was the danger. The court-appointed psychologist evaluated both of us. I had to sit in sessions where Josh went on long tangents about how the world was doomed and how I wasn't preparing our kids for survival. He tried to argue that they were better off learning survival skills at the commune than going to school or playing with their friends. It was terrifying to see how deeply he believed it all. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. Josh was only allowed supervised visitation as long as he didn't try to push his beliefs onto Anna and Luke. I thought that would be the end of it, that Josh would see reason eventually. But things didn't get better. He became more erratic, less consistent with his visits, and more bitter toward me. Every time he came to see the kids, there was tension in the air, like he was waiting for the moment I'd crack and agree with him. It's been 6 months since the custody battle ended, and things have been relatively stable. Josh still lives at the commune, but he's been coming around more lately, trying to make amends. He says he's rethinking some of his beliefs, but I don't know if I can trust him anymore. I'm still trying to figure out how to co-parent with someone who sees the world so differently from me. In some ways, I'm still grieving the man I married. Josh was a good husband, a great father before all of this. But the person he's become, I don't even recognize him anymore. It's like I lost my husband to a cult, and I don't know if I'll ever get him back. At night, I lie awake thinking about how things could have been different. I wonder if I could have said something, done something to keep him from going down this path. But deep down, I know that Josh made his own choices. It wasn't my fault that he became obsessed with fear and conspiracy. I just wish he could see that. For now, I'm focused on my kids and trying to give them a normal, happy life. I've put Anna and Luke in therapy, hoping they won't be too affected by everything that's happened. They're still young, and I want to make sure they grow up feeling safe and secure, despite everything going on with their father. I'm sharing this because I feel like I'm not alone. With everything happening in the world, climate change, the housing crisis, political unrest, it's easy for people to fall down these rabbit holes of fear and conspiracy. I've seen it happen to my own family, and I just hope that by sharing my story, someone else might realize what's happening before it's too late.